we got a banned and restricted announcement coming tonight. So sit back, relax, and watch me throw on my Nostradamus cap and predict the future. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to HometownTcg. You all know me, my name is Josh, and for those of you showing up expecting to see the next spicy episode of the reaction phase, my partner, Louis, from over at Kitchen Table TCG, and I have decided to postpone recording of that episode until after this announcement. We want to be able to give you guys our reactions right away, so we will be recording that episode almost immediately. When the announcement drops, you'll get our reaction on the reaction phase. So look for that episode coming this week. But in the meantime, I thought it was important to take some time and talk about what I think are possible outcomes for this banned and restricted announcement. So in this video today, I'm going to talk about the 3 possible outcomes, how likely I think they are, and what this is going to do for our meta, for the game, with all the turmoil and everything going on right now. And I think I've got some spicy takes in here, so stay tuned. All right, guys, we talked about the fact that I believe there are 3 possible outcomes to this banned and restricted announcement. And the first of those possible outcomes, in my mind, is probably the weirdest, the most techie outcome, and that is an Oaken Old errata. Now, yes, I know this is a banned and restricted announcement, but I believe we could see an Oaken Old errata saying that somehow Oaken Old and Starvo no longer pair up. You can't play the 2 together, however that may be, whether it's make it an Oldhim specialization, or just specifically say that if you're playing Starvo, you may not play Oaken Old. But this is a weird feeling, and I've talked in the past that erratas feel kind of weird. For the new player experience, which on this channel I've mentioned is super important in this fiscal year for Flesh and Blood, erratas feel like to play the game, I need a subsequent set of books or a manual or something to get me through how to play these cards that I just opened. Now, yes, a banned and restricted announcement is that way, but it's different in the fact that I allow you to still play the card, but then you have to see the reference manual for what the card actually does. So erratas are a slippery slope, and it's something I would definitely like to avoid seeing. But if LSS decides that this is the only way to create this parity and this balance that they're going for in competitive play, I wouldn't be surprised to see this happen. Now, this is the least likely of the 3 outcomes, in my opinion. Again, I think it's super awkward. It makes new players opening the Tales of Aria product kind of have these weird questions. And instead of something just being binary, being banned, being a yes or a no, you can play it or you can't play it, an errata, it just feels weird, and I'm not a fan. This is the outcome that I'm the least a fan of for sure. So let's move into the second outcome. And as we climb the outcome ladder here, I believe the outcomes become more and more likely. So the second outcome that I think is more likely than the first, but not quite as likely as the third, you know, that's how a middle position works, is that we get an Awakening ban, a straight up Awakening ban. And this outcome, I think, could help quite a bit. A big problem with Starvo is even if you commit to the race against Starvo with something like your Lightning Lexi, they have this magical get out of jail free card to put themselves in a position to have an instant comeback. You know, it's like ramen noodle soup or cup soup. It's instant comeback. You can just have this comeback at any time. And with that mechanic in the game, it feels like no other deck has this free get out of jail free card, no matter what has happened. Every other deck that sets up to kind of take tempo back or something, it takes a lot of setup. You got to have a lot of time. You got to put a lot of effort into this. It's not just snap of the fingers and you have pressure and potential all over again. So a straight up Awakening ban is a possibility to give Starvo, or take the ability away from Starvo to just be able to snap his fingers and be back in the game. And we talked about, you know, in the last banned and restricted video way back when, we talked about banned and restricted announcements and their effect and kind of splash damage that happens to other heroes. As we ban stuff out of Starvo, or as we restrict stuff from Starvo or Visceral or Prism or whatever it might be, there's an opportunity for those cards to affect other decks in the meta that weren't problems, and maybe steal some power away from what was making them, you know, semi-viable in the first place. But Awakening is fairly safe. A lot of your Guardian decks that would be playing this Awakening card don't really lean into the notion of like falling behind big and then using a single instance to catch up. These Guardian strategies are built around the long game grind, a lot of planning, knowing how far you can comfortably get behind without having to present a lot of block. Maybe the fatigue strategy is in play, but there's no need in those decks and in those current strategies for this snap your fingers instant catch-up mechanic. It's just not how those decks play. So this is, as far as ban goes, this is a safe ban, and then it's also a safe ban from the market perspective, where you're not banning a high value card. I know we've heard a lot of talk about wanting to ban, we should ban Crown of Seeds as one of them, but banning a legendary that comes cold foil in first edition product just feels scary. If you ban that legendary out of that first edition product, you take a lot of the value, you take a lot of the chase. A lot of people that have gone out and spent a good amount of money on this card now, at the drop of a hat, had this instantaneous feels bad. It ripples through the community. I don't know if we can go that route. I also don't think, spoiler alert, I don't think Crown of Seeds is deserving of a ban anyway, but that was just the example that came off the top of my head. So I don't think we'll see something like that. Awakening, however, is a very cheap Majestic. It is readily available. It's all over the place. People are not spending a bunch of money. There's not a huge feel bad where if you spent a bunch of money on Awakening, it gets banned, you lost all your money. So the Awakening ban, as far as the banned and restricted announcement, especially, you know, more centric on Starvo, is something that I believe is possible, and I think that's the most likely outcome when it comes to actually banning and restricting stuff. And when you do actually ban and restrict stuff, your deck is going to change, and I know mine did. So I went over to MinMax Games this morning, and I set a shopping cart based on the bans and restrictions that I thought were coming. So MinMax Games does sponsor this channel. You can check them out for all of your Flesh and Blood products and singles needs. And I made a couple shopping carts myself based on what I think gets banned and what I'm going to need for the new heroes I play. So it's a pretty exciting time as far as new decks I'm brewing. So shout out MinMax Games. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to pick up stuff on the Toot Suite real quick. And finally, the last outcome that I think is going to happen is probably the least exciting, but I think it's most likely, and that's we get nothing. We get no bans, we get no restrictions. We see Starvo, he's dominating the meta, he's seeing a lot of play. A lot of our high-end players are saying that Starvo is beatable, that he's not a problem. Whatever it might be, we're so close to this living legend kind of safety net catch-all mechanic, and it's an interesting opportunity to see how Living Legend and something hitting Living Legends affects our game and our community, as well as it's an opportunity to let the system do its job, right? If a deck came out and was dominant and was winning a bunch of events, the system is there to kind of catch and pull that deck from the meta and create this weird sort of parity. So the Living Legend system is there to kind of catch this. I don't think that this was its intention. The inception of the Living Legend system wasn't so the most recent hero could come out, be overpowered, hit Living Legend, and kind of phase out. I don't think that was its intention, but it is this safety net, and it is a catch-all. So while it might not be the intention of the system, it can 100% have that effect, and we can use it right now. So I do think this is the most likely outcome of the ban and restriction announcement tonight. Spoiler alert, if you're watching this video or the reaction phase probably tomorrow, I could be extremely wrong, and this could be a very bad take, but I think we're not going to see anything happen. And then finally, I do want to touch on the idea of these splash bans, right? We've reached a dangerous time in Flesh and Blood and what we're talking about in the community, because I've seen a lot of talk about Visceral bans as well, and maybe even some talk about Prism bans. And we're in a slippery slope, a dangerous slope. And let's focus on Visceral, because, you know, Prism was second place at this event. Prism's a very good deck. But Visceral is not seeing a ton of play as far as play percentage goes, and it's not seeing an extremely high win percentage. So we're talking about Visceral bans based solely on the fact that we are theorizing that if Starvo is removed from the meta, Viserai becomes this monster, this absolute beast that can't be dealt with and needs bans because you can't play against it or it's overpowered or whatever your position might be. That's a dangerous spot to be in. Nobody has had the time then to sit around and tech against the Viserai deck, to practice, to try to figure out ways to beat it, maybe dedicate some sideboard slots to it, and we're already talking about banning the deck. So I'm not a huge fan of this outcome. I don't like this being kind of on the forefront of our mind. If we're going to focus on bans and restrictions hitting this top deck, we should look to the future and think about it, but without the proper amount of data and just kind of going on what we feel, I think we're in a dangerous spot. So I want to avoid that altogether. So guys, that's my takes on the banned and restricted announcement coming up. Let me know your takes in the comment section below. Again, shout out one more time to MinMax Games for sponsoring this channel and giving me the opportunity to just chat with you guys all the time. Shout out to all the patrons that you can visit at patreon.com/HometownTcg. And those two are going to collaborate this month. This month we'll be bringing exclusive MinMax Games benefits when it comes to Flesh and Blood products to HometownTcg patrons. That's right, patrons only. So visit us at patreon.com/HometownTcg. Let me know what you think is coming up in the banned and restricted announcement. And until next time, you guys know me. My name is Josh, and we'll see you around. I'm not doing the YouTube camera thing. I'm just not doing it. I almost knocked my camera over last time. I'm not doing it.